Welcome back, everybody, to the Birdies and Bourbon Show. We're happy to have Blake on with us today. Blake, thanks for sharing a couple of bottles. I'll get into why you selected those bottles in a minute. I got a feeling we got the duality, given the I'm in Atlanta. I don't know if you saw the show.
Got
with us Chad,
yeah,
so.
yeah. Yeah, you got the Atlanta pick because I figured, give you something maybe you're familiar with, but you hadn't had from them. So
yeah, I actually, I don't think I tried this in the lineup that we had with him. Off the smell, I'm definitely not recognizing it. But hold on, before we get started. So we usually like to ask a question or two, kind of get things flowing. You've already got it flowing. Hey, well, if you didn't see that, as Marianne Eves would say, big sip. So,
well, I poured the wrong bottle first, so I feel like I had to, get that one down and loosen up a little bit, and now I'll pour the duality with you.
All right. So I just when I should have asked. I mean, you may have wanted to go on Watershed first. I figured Watershed is a barrel strength. That would be our second tasting. So, all right. So I did check out your Instagram page at. So in case you're not familiar with Blake, you can find him at Bourbonr on Instagram. Some really great whiskeys on there. You got, we're talking new craft distilleries to old dusties. And where we're going to wind up towards the end of this thing, I definitely want to get into some of the meat selection and the barbecuing you're doing. So I love the one, you had I think you had, I got a bottle of it back here. I think you had the Old Taylor. I don't know if it's the 6-year with a bone-in ribeye, I think was on there.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm a big fan of that one. So you're inviting a couple over to the house. Maybe they're new acquaintances of yours. You're having dinner. What are you serving me to eat, and what are you pairing with it to drink?
Yeah, so I think you can't go wrong with some form of steak or barbecue. Top picks are always ribeyes. Even though I had a friend tell me recently, he's like, "Yeah, I'm not really big into like the fatty cuts. I enjoy a tenderloin." I'm like, well, what is wrong with you?
It's an X-brand, right?
I'm just gonna assume that everybody loves like upper prime ribeyes and or tomahawk steaks and so
too soon. They are not going to the World Series too soon.
Yeah, I should have been a little more considerate for Atlanta people watching the show. But as a Cubs fan who's had to endure like years of terrible baseball, I don't feel too bad. No, so usually something steak, potatoes, vegetables. I really do love grilling and cooking. My wife doesn't always love that because she accuses me of making way too big of a mess. But hey, it's, I'm the chef. That's why I have sous chefs that come in. But no, so it's probably something like that, either that or ribs. Hard to go wrong. You find very few people who don't love ribs that have been smoked for 4 hours and are really good. And then from there, I think you kind of start with, I'm not huge with drinking bourbon with food. It seems kind of strange to me. I do like to pair it a little bit for the Instagram, but as far as actually eating the food, I don't like drinking bourbon. So I'd go some kind of red wine. And then from there, like, you better be ready for a tasting if you're coming over. Like we're going to start with something you may like, and we're going to explore from there. And I'll try to tell people, I'm like, hey, I don't care what you drink, and I'm not telling you how to pour your own glass, but start small, because if you pour 2 ounces, you're going to be hammered by about the third or fourth bottle. But no, that's always fun things for me, is to have people come over, let people try things they haven't tried or have always wanted to, or just see new brands or try something dusty, or I try to keep a collection at the house that gives me something to give everyone, whether they're novices or whether they've been into bourbon for a while and you got to pull something out that's really old. Try to keep a good collection for that. So
awesome. Yeah, I'm just waiting for the date and time.
It's not that far of a drive, so you tell me. We'll get golf on the books. And
so you're in Jacksonville, right?
Yeah. So I'm in Jacksonville, Florida. And even though SEELBACH is based out of DC, I'm born and raised here. And then whenever I bought the license, moving to DC wasn't really in the cards. So we just make it work.
So I went to college in Jacksonville, and I didn't. I was a little
UNF or JU.
So it's now called Florida State College.
Okay.
So it was a 2-year school, and then it moved over to a 4-year school. And I'm trying to think. I lived off of Deer something Drive right there.
Deerwood.
Deerwood. Yeah, and then the golf course right there.
Southside campus. Yeah, so there's 2 courses there actually. There's Deerwood, and then down the street there's Deer Creek.
No. So I played Deer Creek before. A good friend of mine, he's a member there. Chris, I call him Belafonte just so I don't give his name away. So I played there with him. But then the course that I lived on, I lived in some condos, and it's not there anymore. Yeah. Was it Bay Meadows?
Yeah. Yeah. Funny story. So I made my high school golf team at Bay Meadows. I don't even know if it was country club. I think it was just Bay Meadows. No. Yeah, it's a public. It was a public course. It definitely was. I told you before the show, I'm not a great golfer, but we'd have to play 9 to make the high school team, and it was basically like, hey, we got to have 6 people, and there may be 7 people trying out, and. So that it's actually torn down, and it's now all condos now.
So when I was there, so I lived there from 2002 until 2005-ish, nice. late in the year in 05. And then, so they had, I think in 2005 is when they started, is when they kind of shut the course down, right? So it went from, I could walk out my back door, and I think I was on number 7, I believe. There was a little pond there, and there was like a little rain shelter around it. I think it was a par 5 dogleg right. It went into those like the apartments that were kind of all the way at the other end. And I really had a good time in Jacksonville, man. I'm a huge fan of Jacksonville. I love that place. I mean, I've lived in a few cities, not a whole lot, but I've lived in a few. That is one of the places, 2 of the places I've lived in Florida. And I would absolutely move to Jacksonville. I'd move to Jax Beach probably, or Atlantic Beach, somewhere around there if I were moving back. But I would live in Jacksonville in a heartbeat again. And I love that town. And I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm obviously biased, but I'm a big fan. It's like we don't have everything a major city has, but we've got a pretty good bit, and but we have a lot less congestion and everything else as well. So. Pros and cons, I guess.
It's like a really large town instead of a really small city, instead of
like 7 towns kind of combined under one name, essentially. It feels like at times.
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned you were playing, is it the club championship that's coming up?
No. I'm not club championship. No, it's just the member tournament.
Member. And what club do you belong to?
So this is Timuquana here in Jacksonville.
Oh, yeah. I haven't played that. But I've heard good things. Yeah.
It's a fun, I didn't even know it existed until we moved to that side of town a few years ago. And I was kind of like pushing back, telling my wife, like, I don't want to do the whole country club thing. And then we have 4 young kids. So it's like, oh, there's a pool there? Okay. And then that was when, I took like a decade off of golf and have slowly picked it back up. And golf's just, it's a fun sport. If nothing else, I like to I'll go out and walk 9 and tell myself, like, if you're frustrated, who cares? Because you're outside, it's nice out, you're playing, I'm past that stage in my life where I think I'm going to be competitive and get angry and throw a club. Like, I'm there to enjoy it. Maybe I'll get mad and 10 seconds later, I got to let it go.
Well, it's funny you bring that up. So I was thinking, we, so Dan and I have day jobs also, and, you have to do these like career development things. And I would always tell my, my directors or managers, whatever, like, hey, what's your career goals? And I'm like, well, I want to make it to, I knew I wasn't going to make the PGA Tour, right? I am shitty at golf, but I love to play. So I'm like, well, this is early on in my years. And I'm like, well, I'll have a goal. Maybe I could play the senior tour one day. If I stay in good shape and I'm healthy, it's like senior tour could be something manageable. Well, as I've progressed in years, the senior tour definitely wasn't happening. So I'm like, well,
Got
okay.
tougher and tougher.
Well, and then Phil joins, right?
I was gonna say Phil's out there hitting 330 bombs on the senior tour, on the champions tour, whatever they call it now.
Yeah, beating up on the old men. And every time Phil shows up, it's like, okay, well, we're playing for second place at best. So I'm like, okay, well, that's not going to happen. So how can we stay involved in golf and be relevant? And it's like, we got to get this podcast going, man.
Yeah,
it's the
how
only
about
chance.
We drink bourbon and so actually our club, they got a champions tour event next year that oh shoot, why am I blanking on his name? But it'll come to me in a second. But they're bringing it in next October, I think it is. That they're coming. So I'm pretty excited about that, just to see them actually play. And because we have TPC, so you get to go out there, and that's a whole different ball game of golf. But now everyone, I feel like even on the senior tour, everybody can hit it way farther than I ever will be able to, even as a young, 35-year-old guy. Like, it's just not happening. There's not enough torque in my back to hit it over 300 yards.
Yeah, at this point, I've crested 40, so I'm like, shit, I'm going to hurt myself, and I can't really drink more than I already do. I'm going to be classified as a person with a problem if I go down that road. So
then I have to go to a real job afterwards and explain why I'm so sore, and that's not going to happen.
Yeah. So hold on. So let's, we've been tasting. So for those of you that are just listening and not watching us, we've already made it through, I don't know, probably a glass and a half or maybe 2 glasses. They're not full. They're just, they're handsome pours. And so you sent over, let's see. So we'll shout out to Chad at ASW. So we've got Duality Double Malt is what I poured.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you poured first, Blake.
So I now have the Duality Double Malt, and then there's the Watershed.
Yeah, and then we've got the Barrel Strength Watershed, which we did have somebody appreciate. I posted these on Instagram today, and we had a guy, or a person, I should say, that responded back and said, "How is it?" I'm like, "I don't know. We'll find out soon. We're recording tonight, and we'll let you know." So did any particular reason that you sent these two? We touched on a little bit, but I'd rather hear your explanation. So
one, the Atlanta connection on the ASW Duality, and then 2, the Watershed's one that we're going to be launching on Friday. And so I always get things from people. It's like, well, I heard you talk about this barrel, but it's all gone. So thanks so much. So whatever I do, I try to at least have something that will be available. I know this will probably get posted next week sometime, or I don't know what your schedule is, but there should be bottles available. I don't think it's one that'll just sell out immediately. And I think both of these really highlight what is really cool about craft whiskey right now. And so, to kind of dive into my background a little bit, I had this blog Bourbonr, and, we did a bunch of private barrels. It was the Pappy Van Winkle release map, the Antique Collection release map. It's, what new Four Roses small batch limited edition, what ages there were. Then I started to notice there are a lot of really cool smaller producers coming out, and that's kind of how SEELBACH evolved. Initially I was looking more just at private picks, and then we started bringing on all these other brands to kind of highlight some of these whiskeys because they're really good. And I think a lot of us, and I think there'll be even more over the next few years, but a lot of us are getting tired of never finding a limited edition bourbon that releases in the fall. And, I don't have time to drive around to 50 stores, wait in lines, camp out overnight for a chance.
Nor do you want to. I mean, what fun is that?
No, like a Weller Antique. Like I've had it. I really like it. It's great bourbon, but at this point, there's plenty of other great bourbon out anymore. And at some level, you try enough of bourbons from the major distilleries, you want to try something new. And so, this Duality, what's really interesting about it is it's 50% malted rye and 50% smoked cherrywood smoked malt. I think that's, hold on. I always get these mixed up.
No, I think that's right. Duality, and I'm going to swing by and see Chad. We were trying to get up there tomorrow. It's not going to work out for him, but I think I'm going to go by. They just released Optic.
We back?
All right, we got you back. Sorry.
Are we back?
Oh, sorry. You got me?
Yep.
Yep,
think
we
so.
got you. Yep.
Okay. Sorry. I moved my computer. I think I messed something up. But yeah, so it is malted rye and cherry smoked malted barley. You know, you're getting a bunch of different flavors. You know, it's not a bourbon. It's a malt. But just a ton of like leather and fruity notes and tobacco, like sweet tobacco and spicy raisins and just all this crazy stuff. And it's really good. And I think it's like a little over 3 years old. And just, you know, I was pretty excited whenever I tasted this barrel.
Yeah, so it's the single barrel pick. So for those that are listening, so again, we're drinking the Duality Double Malt, and it's coming in at what do we got? We got 53.
Should be 106 proof. Yeah, 106.8 proof.
106. Yeah. So I'll tell you what, if you're a Scotch drinker and you're wanting to, it's like, I don't really drink a lot of bourbon, but I like Scotch because I like that kind of smoky, peaty kind of thing. This really fires and hits all those notes for me, man. I mean, and so you mentioned raisins, and it's kind of a mixed bag, right? Some people are like, raisins, I don't like them. Raisins, I do like them. But I haven't really had anything. I mean, I'm almost getting like a kind of, I'm going to say like that New Orleans bread pudding with raisins in it kind of thing. I mean, it is like totally that note. And then on the back end, so I'm thinking like a kind of like a sweet barbecue sauce with this thing that's smoky. I mean, this would pair really, really well if you were doing. So if you're you mentioned ribs earlier, and if you're a dry rib guy and you like your barbecue sauce on the side, this thing is like totally. Actually, this would make a damn
kind of
good
like the barbecue sauce on the side.
Well, talk about making a whiskey barbecue sauce. I mean, this is like hands down, man. I mean, this is
now you're speaking my language. Now you're giving me all kinds of good ideas.
Well, I mean, but like this would make a hell of a glaze for could condense this stuff down. And I mean, this is like all over some baby back ribs, man. Slow smoke those things. I mean, that is money right there. So Chad, if you're listening, when's the rib fest? Bourbonr and I and Dan are.
I would drive up for it. I am more than happy to shoot all holla smoker up there for it. So let's make that happen.
Well, we could also get Chad Parker from Eastlake. Maybe he and is it Stuart Sink?
Yeah,
that's partners with. Yes, yeah. Maybe we can get the Eastlake Golf Club. We turn this into like a overnight event, man. We may get around it at Eastlake.
Yeah. Get around in, have ribs, have whiskey. I mean, I can't think of a better embodiment of the podcast. You know,
it's Birdies and Bourbon, man. I mean, what more could you ask for? So yeah, this is a really tasty pour. Thanks for sharing this one. Yeah, thanks for sharing this. This is awesome.
And that's where, you know, ASW, I think a lot of people know it in the Atlanta region, and now it just seems like they're getting even more national attention. So they have their Georgia Heartwood bourbon, which is really good. Yeah. And I think they're just firing on all cylinders. So they're bringing in people. It's like, hey, if you're into Scotch, like you said, if you like that peaty, smoky, this is the American version of that. It's not, to me, I know Scotch drinkers will hate me for this, but to me, some of the peated scotches, the Isla stuff is like drinking an ashtray. That's not what this is to me. Like it's got a good balance of smoke. It's not just like heavy smoke. And then, or if you're a bourbon drinker, go drink the Georgia Heartwood, and it is really, really good. You know, they cut down. I think they had pecan staves to it, and just man, phenomenal bourbon. And you know, pecan's one of my favorite things to smoke with, so it all ties in. So no, I really like what they're doing, and any chance I get to kind of talk about ASW, I try to take the opportunity. So
yeah, this one's, I mean, I'm getting like some kind of chili out of there, like some chili spice, and I mean, this is totally like drinking like that 4 hour
Yeah,
risk it.
It's not.
It's good, man.
It's not the day drinker for sure. It's the one you want to sit down, maybe smoke a cigar with it, or just sit down and enjoy. And it just continues to evolve. Like you'll continue to get new things the whole time. So
yeah, this would be great with a
that's
cigar,
what I like
man.
about that.
Yeah, it's got that nice kind of deep amber finish in there. I mean, this is crazy good. I told the ASW guys when I had them on, I'm like, I don't know why so you said it earlier, right? It's kind of like, hey, I may give you something that you're used to or something that kind of, where you kind of sit at usually. I don't know why, living in Atlanta, I hadn't tried ASW until, Dan, we had them on maybe a month or two ago, give or take.
We had them on like a month ago, and Cal and I were talking afterwards. We had Chad on. Chad, number one, Chad was outstanding on the pod because that guy knows his stuff. He knows how to tell good stories. And he was entertaining throughout the entire time. I think we probably spent like 2.5 hours with him on the pod.
We spent a long time.
Yeah, I mean, not all that was released, but we spent. But the product is outstanding. Everything was outstanding. Yeah.
I don't know why I passed it up. And again, I mean, probably just like everybody, I shouldn't say everybody else. I don't want to speak for everybody else, but I mean, in my simple mind, it's like, if I'm going to drink bourbon, I drink bourbons and scotch and whiskey. I don't drink a lot of vodka. We got another guy that likes to chime in every now and then, Sweet Cream. He's a big vodka fan. That's why we don't let him on the show. But and it's like, oh, it's Atlanta, and and I want to drink like a real bourbon or real whiskey, and I mean, these guys are really doing an outstanding job of making real whiskey, and and this the things that they're doing as far as finishing in Richland rum barrels, and I think they've got a new port barrel coming in, and it's like it's a different time. And so I'll stop in a minute and let you share, because we definitely want to talk about SEELBACH a little bit and kind of what's going on there before we get into the Watershed. But, it's the days of, hey, this is your dad's whiskey and you only have one bottle at the house and it's the same bottle every time. I mean, there's so many, I mean, I think we've surpassed the craft beer industry as far as bourbon and whiskey goes, because I don't taste a lot of crappy craft whiskeys. I mean, almost everything you're getting now is such quality that it's like, I don't know why I haven't tried or experimented with that before, because it is so good. And it's the issue you run into is kind of like your issue behind you. And I'm sure it's even bigger than that, right? It's like, holy shit, how much liquor can I buy? And it's like, no, really, you got to try this bottle, because it's different, but it's different in a really good way that it's like, I got to try it. You're right. I do. And you're trying it. So it's a really fun time to be a whiskey or bourbon explorer right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it just is kind of the parlay on that. It's just like that exploration is taking a step further. It's like, the big guys said this kind of at the beginning of, they make great bourbon, but it's how much variability are we really getting from a distillery who has 2 or 3 different mash bills, and then we're just picking from different ages and different places in the warehouse. Like, you get some different flavor notes, but all in all, the profile is really, really tight on all of that. So then you bring in somebody new who's changing up the mash bill, or just, the barrel finishings and all the different kind of things, and kind of pushing the innovation button a little bit. And that's what's exciting to me is, now granted, there are some bad craft whiskeys out there. I think we've all been burned on that before. We've all spent $80 on a craft bottle, and it was, you have trouble mixing it with Coke. But that was much more prevalent 5-6 years ago. And I've talked about this before, where I don't think that whiskey can't be good at 2 years old or 4 years old. I think you just have to make it a certain way. I always point to like Chattanooga whiskey, where they get in depth on, okay, all right, if we want more vanilla, if we want more caramel, if we want some of those older notes that you're used to coming from the aging, how do we get that into the whiskey through the mash bill. And so they use like a lot of caramel malts. They use toasted barrels. They use toasted and charred barrels, and all these other things. And they look at the whole process to just make the best product. And that's where I think we are in craft whiskey today. Is there's a lot more stuff coming out that we've just gotten better at, just because of time, education, more open, all the above. That, you know, we're just making a lot more and better whiskey because of that. So
well, it's very user friendly, right? From the sense that, so think about these malts that they're using, and I wouldn't say I wouldn't say atypical is probably not the right word to use, but it's like, how do we, so to your point, you know, how do we take 1 year, 2-year-old whiskeys and build a profile or an expression that stacks up to something that's going to be an 8, 10, 12 plus year that's kind of an eye grabber, you know, and I think that's exactly what we're walking into today. And think about what's already being released. I mean, the next 10 years is going to be freaking crazy in what we're going to see, because you're going to see those 2-year expressions that are going to start coming out, and they're releasing like that. And again, I mean, like, I want to pour this again. I'm not going to, because I want to be like somewhat coherent and not too belligerent, at least for like 45 good minutes. So I may throttle down, in a minute. But I mean, like, literally, this is, I mean, no kidding. I mean, I've got like a Manhattan in a bottle, or an old fashioned in a bottle. I'm using that as a frame of reference, but this does not taste like I'm drinking straight whiskey,
106 proof, or
I mean, there is absolutely, I get nothing from a bite on this thing. I mean, like, no shit, man. I could fill up my master's cup with ice. I could dump that in there, and I could not be talking very clearly by the end of this show or in the next 10 minutes. But I mean, literally, I mean, you pour this in a glass over ice, throw a garnish in it, and it literally tastes like a cocktail with all the flavor profiles that are just exploding into this thing, man. This is not pulling Jack Daniels off the shelf and taking a hit of it, or Maker's Mark. I mean, there's like this. I mean, you could sit here. We could do this one for probably 2 hours and just sit there and
continue to
just pick things, not pick it apart, but pick things out of it and pick profiles and how it's, and as it's sat here in a glass. I haven't let it set very long, but yeah, it just continues to open and go, and it's amazing stuff that these people are doing in a short time frame. Absolutely. We had Tim on, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that or not. We had Tim on.
Yeah, I watched that one, or I think I listened to it actually. I saw it on, but I finished it, I think, in the car. Yeah.
No, but I mean, like, crazy things that they're doing, right? And it just goes to show, and I don't know if you've listened to any of our shows. I mean, I'm a big, I like to experiment with home blending, so taking pre-made bottles and like mixing them with different things and kind of seeing, it's like, this one doesn't really do anything for me. Let me add, like, I'm going to mix this with something. I don't know. I think I'm going to look for a good rye to mix it with, like something that
would be interesting,
like a big heavy rye, because think about the raisins and I mean, this thing is like just attaching to my mouth when I'm drinking it.
You're giving me ideas while I'm sitting here.
I mean, I'm thinking like a piggyback 6. I may reach back like you are and get this. What have I got? Oh, actually, I'm going to go for the Rare Breed barrel proof rye, and I'm going to mix. I think that's going to be a hell of a pour, man. I mean, that's going to make something work, I think.
Yeah, that would be, and that's the fun part of it to me, is being able to do experiments like that and try different things, and just see what you like, what you don't like. If you don't love it, go put it on the shelf.
Hold on, what are you mixing over there, by the way?
I'm mixing it with a single barrel Mackenzie rye that we did. So it's got a ton of like fruit and spice and all this different.
Very cool.
All these different notes. So I'm gonna see what that's like.
You're not outdoing me. I'll be back in a second.
Here we go. That's what I like to hear. It's my kind of show. But that's the fun stuff to me, and that's how you expand your palate. That's how you start to pinpoint flavor notes. That's how you understand your own preferences and ultimately make better decisions. If you drank Duality and said, "Oh, I just don't like it. It's just got that smoky note." Okay, perfect. You don't have to drink anything smoky after this, and you'll save yourself money on bottles. But if you say, "Ooh, I love that," then you may want to explore some other options. Okay, the rare breed rye, I like that.
Yeah, so I'm mixing that with the Duality. I'm gonna let it sit for a second. Hey, so let's go. So we haven't even promoted you. We've just been shooting the shit and kind of going down. But so did you are the founder of SEELBACH.com, correct?
Correct.
So how did, like, other than you like to drink and you're an entrepreneur, give me the why.
Yeah.
How?
Yeah, that's I always wish there was some like great backstory of how I got into bourbon, and there's not. Like, I came from a family who didn't even drink, so it's like no family heritage. But I get on things, and I get on hobbies, and I love to dive deep into things, and bourbon was just one of those things about 8 or 9 years ago that I really started diving deep into. And then I started Bourbonr, and we were doing a bunch of barrel picks, like I said. And then about 3 years ago, a company that was advertising on my site said, "Hey, we're thinking about selling. Do you know anybody's interested?" And I knew about this license in DC. And so makes it a little bit easier to operate in DC. And so I was like, well, I don't know anybody for the other store that you have, but I'm interested on the DC side. And my thinking was I would just run my private barrels through there. So I was already doing, maybe 10 or 12 barrels a year. And so I was like, I'll just run them through there. And all this kind of at the same time, like we had just done a Wyoming whiskey barrel. And it's like, why is nobody talking about Wyoming whiskey? They're 6-year-old bourbon. It's really good. And then a few others popped up. And so all this was kind of coming together at the same time. So I ended up buying the license, starting to operate out of DC, and then just bringing in, I just saw this niche of craft spirits that nobody was really filling, where it's like, I get it. In a store, it's hard to sell Duality because you just walk and see it on a shelf and it's like, oh, the bottle looks nice, Duality double malt. Okay, I'll keep going. But then whenever we sit here and we talk about it, and it's like, well, it's 50% malted rye, it's 50% cherry smoked malted barley. That's what really sells people. And that's where I felt like the online presence that I had from Bourbonr would really do well for these kind of brands. And I'd built up, a little bit of a following from Bourbonr. So people had been reading my reviews, trusted the reviews and everything. So it's like, all right, it's not just some random person who's like, hey, go buy this because we sell it. It's, we have the advantage where we can just kind of work with whoever we want to work with. So that's kind of the long story of how it got started. And then SEELBACH is, I don't know if you know the name or the story behind the name, but
Louisville, Kentucky, the SEELBACH Hotel.
The SEELBACH Hotel. So the bar manager there, he found, this pre-prohibition recipe or menu for the SEELBACH cocktail. And, SEELBACH Hotel is very historic, like presidents have stayed there, all this stuff. And so it was really cool that he could find this piece of history, recreate the cocktail, bring it back. And then a few years ago, he came back and said, oh, by the way, that was just a cocktail I created. I made that whole story up. So
is that a true story?
Yeah, that's a true story. Yeah.
So what's the ingredients in the cocktail for the listeners?
So it's like it varies, but it's like 7 dashes of Peychaud bitters, 7 dashes of Angostura bitters, bourbon. I should know this.
Is it vermouth?
It's something like vermouth, and then you top it with champagne. But it's something else. It's really a good cocktail. I can't say I drink a ton of them, but I just love the story because my thing with all this is there's a ton of people using the word craft and handmade and grain to glass, but none of these words are regulated. So who really knows? Tito's vodka is still craft vodka, even though it's the largest selling spirit in the world, and all they do is just bring it to Austin. I don't even know if they redistill it anymore.
Put a label on it, and here you go.
Yeah. And so kind of my idea was to focus on what's truly craft, and I'm not saying you had to distill it for it to be craft. I think the blending process is really underrated in American whiskey. So let's highlight blending in some of these independent bottlers, and so that became the idea, and just be full on about transparency and highlight these brands. And so it's been going ever since. We had the 2-year anniversary in July, so a little over 2 years old now, and it's been going well.
Well, business has got to be cranking now with everything that's gone on in 2020, right?
Yeah, 2020 has been a crazy, crazy year. We were extremely fortunate to be one of the industries that was actually, spurred on by the lockdowns and everything, because everybody wants booze. And we were able to do some cool things, like bartenders who were obviously weren't able to work at the time, able to bring them in and have them help us out while we were at an increased capacity. But yeah, it brings headaches too, because it's like then UPS and FedEx are overloaded, and then we have people who are going to pick up pallets for us from distilleries, and
sure,
the driver refuses to wear a mask, so then they won't let them in. It's always something in a small business, but no, it's been good for sure, and we've really been fortunate to do some cool things just with the relationship we now have with Privateer Rum. They usually do a big distiller store release at their distillery, and because people can't travel, we were able to get a lot of that allocation, or some of that allocation, and sell it online and open it up to more people. And that's kind of the idea, is to just spread these craft spirits out to the states we're allowed to ship to, and just kind of grow the base as much as we can.
So how many states? How many states can you ship to?
Oh, that's a variable question by the day. It seems like I think it's like 8 or 10. It's not many. I wish we were wine. I think wine's like 43, but hopefully spirits will get there eventually.
Very cool. Yeah.
So what you mix? You mix the duality with the Mackenzie rye.
Yeah, I mixed duality with Mackenzie rye. I think it needs a little more duality. I'm getting a lot of the rye notes. So are you going on to the Watershed now?
Well, I'm just pouring it. I'm going to let it breathe a little bit while I'm sipping on this other one. But yeah, okay. I'm going to pour and kind of let it open up a little bit. So again, I just cracked these, so these are all fresh bottles.
This Watershed it's crazy. I'll kind of tell the story because it's a longer one.
So this is so we got barrel strength Watershed Distillery. This is Indianapolis or Indianapolis.
They're in Ohio. What's the city?
They got a stamp here. But Columbus, Ohio.
Columbus, that's right. Yeah.
And it's coming in at 113.06. Is this we got batch SB? And
so this was a private barrel that we did as well. It's got the seal box on the neck tag. And so this is a pretty cool one, because this is, as far as it's either the first or the second bourbon finished in a Nocino barrel. So if you're not familiar with Nocino, it's a green walnut liqueur. So I don't know what the process is for making it, but somehow they take green walnuts, let them macerate, then they add sugar, spices, all this stuff, and make a liqueur out of it. And so
where is that prevalent at? Where do they drink that at?
Mainly Italy. So there are very few American Nocinos. The majority of them are Italian.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it makes like an incredible Manhattan, and you can throw it in just about anything. Just add depth, add some bitterness, some sweetness. Really interesting product on its own, the Nocino is. And I was talking with a friend of mine, Aaron Goldfarb. He has the book Hacking Whiskey. And so we had kind of started saying like, all right, you have the book Hacking Whiskey about home blending and all this stuff. How could we hack a barrel? So we've done a few of them now. And this was one. He was like, hey, have you ever heard of Watershed? Like, no, I haven't heard of them. He's like, they've been around for a while. But they're one of the few people I know that has a barrel-aged Nocino. So typically it's just they make the liqueur, but Watershed actually would barrel-age in previous bourbon barrels their Nocino. And so I was like, well, put me in contact with them. I'd love to chat about it. And so what we did here was they sent me a 4-year-old bourbon sample, tried it. I'm like, okay, this is pretty good. Like, all right, well, if you're willing to commit to the barrel, we'll put it in a Nocino barrel, and then we'll let it age, and you tell us when it's ready. Well, the first few months, I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I do? did I go and just waste, all this money on a barrel that I don't think is that great? And the story can only sell you so much. And then, so after, a month or two of that, I'm like, okay, like maybe see a little bit of promise. And then after about 6 months, I'm like, oh, wow. Like, it's actually starting to pick up on the sweetness is a little more subtle. It's rounded it out. Like the color on it is pretty crazy. Just picking up a lot of like herbally notes and everything. And then in July, I tasted the sample and I'm like, this is ready to go. Like, this is really good. So it ended up being in the Nocino barrel for 9 months. So it's 4 years old and 9 months bourbon. And it's one of those things. It's another one where I don't think anybody's going to grab this bottle and pour it every single night, but it's just a really interesting bottle. Like, I get a ton of herbs, like mintiness and
I'm
pepper
getting like some anise on this thing on the nose.
Yeah,
if that's fair.
Like there's almost like some gin, like
fennel. I'm getting some fennel on this
like
one.
Fennel, and then on the palate, like I pick up some of the sweetness, but a lot of spice, a lot of just really interesting stuff. And so that's the stuff I love doing. It's really cool. I love some of the brands we carry and they sell really quick, but ultimately this is what kind of drives me, is fun experimental projects like this where we get to play around a little bit and try different things out. I think we did, although barrel bourbon, they've done all kinds of crazy finishes within the last year, so they took away a lot of our firsts. But we had like the first ice wine finish. We did a rye finished in a gin barrel. We did the Nocino finish. We have some other cool ones coming down the pipeline of like a rye finished in an absinthe barrel, or maybe a bourbon finished in an absinthe barrel. But yeah, that's what I think craft whiskey should be all about. I don't know if we don't need to get away from like what makes bourbon and whiskey and rum and everything good. Like, I think we should always have our standards, but on the private barrel side, like I want to be able to kind of explore a little bit and play around with some different things. So that's the fun part to me.
Well, there's a foundation, right? And I mean, you can't move away from the foundation because it's like the classics, if you will. And it's, the foundation or the classics, I mean, they give you the opportunity to build, and play around with some of these things like this. To me, I mean, this says, I'm thinking of, I know you said there, we got Atlanta ties here, but like with both of these, I'm kind of getting, I'm drawn to New Orleans with both of these drinks, and I'm getting, I know it's walnut kind of base, but I'm getting a lot of pistachio out of this Watershed. And I'm thinking it's not pistachio pudding, but there is a pistachio.
Yeah, but like
dessert.
that. What's that like? It's like the green.
I know. I'm trying to think of it.
Like, what's that called? Because that is exactly the.
Yeah, and it's like so. It's. I think this is aged for maybe 6 years or so. I don't know.
Bourbon was originally 4 years old, and then it was in the Nocino for another 9 months. So technically, it's almost 5 years. So
this is probably 2 or 3 years older than the Duality, right?
Yep.
The Duality is maybe give or take 2 years, and surprisingly, this is the Watershed is it's hitting my palate pretty thin, not in a bad way, and I'm getting a lot more alcohol, not in a bad way. I mean, I'm just drinking water just to kind of clear and and retry. But yeah, it's so it's kind of, I don't know, is it debunking the older the whiskey, the thicker it is? I don't know, that I'm not going down that road, but it is a little thinner than the ASW is, and it's probably because of the mash bill. And am I reading that there's 5 grains in this, or is that, am I looking at something? So they use, and before I mess that up, I'm going to
pull it up to be certain.
I was
they
looking
use,
at something that said spelt, and I don't even know what spelt
It,
is.
so spelt is, Jim Beam did a spelt whiskey one time. So they use, hold on.
Yeah. So while Blake's looking
Yeah,
that
so
up,
they use
I'm
corn, wheat, rye, barley, and spelt. And yeah, spelt is like some kind of grain. I've had spelt bread before.
Yeah.
It's like also known as dinkel wheat or hold wheat. So it's kind of like in the wheat family, I
so
guess.
it's a weeded.
Yeah, so it's like they should have just called it a double weeded, and then all the bourbon guys would have gone crazy for it.
Yeah,
So.
right. Well, I tell you what. So if I would have tasted this before I got premature as usual and poured the rare breed rye into the duality, I actually think this is going to mix really well with the duality.
It actually probably would. And this one, I think, does. And I talked about this with somebody else where, you know, Fred Minnick used to give him a hard time because he's like, oh, this is a good cocktail whiskey. And it's like, is that Fred's way of saying this sucks? Or, no, like this one, I truly think is a really good cocktail whiskey because it highlights a lot of other things. So, you know, you could mix this with Nocino and do like a Manhattan where you substitute Nocino for vermouth and add bitters and all this other stuff. And that's where I think, you know, kind of understanding the product and I get it. Like I sell it, I'm invested in people liking this stuff, but not every craft whiskey is for everyone. So there's just going to be things you don't like New Riff. I love them. They released one of it was the, oh shoot, hold on, I got it behind me. It was their Backsetter. I liked the Backsetter rye. I did not like the Backsetter bourbon. I pretty much like everything they do. So, you know, but I love that they tried something new. I love that they kind of pushed the boundaries a little bit.
But it doesn't mean that it's bad. It does.
No.
It just means that I didn't particularly care for it. I mean, hey, if that's the only bottle you got and I show up at your house, guess what? bring a damn glass over. I'm drinking it, right? I mean,
exactly.
My fault for not bringing my own bottle. But so
lessons, bring your own bottles, no matter what.
Yeah, right. So you bring up a good point with the Nocino, and I love gin. I'm a big gin fan, and I love a Negroni. Like if you say, hey, you get one cocktail, you get one. It's Negroni for me all day long, and it's not about the gin. It's about the bitter and the vermouth. And I had a chance to go to Oaxaca, I don't know, a year or two ago, and we went to some really shady places. And I was like, you know,
they're always the best ones.
You get this. No, I mean, but we're out in the country, man. And, you know, it's like, you know, at what point are we going to get surrounded by, you know, 1982 Datsun B10 pickup trucks with guys with machetes?
Cartels coming out.
Yeah, exactly. So, but, you know, it was a very cool trip. I would absolutely tell anyone, even if you don't like mezcal, Oaxaca is a place to go and experience the country, the culture, and the people. It's a fantastic state, and everybody's warm and welcoming. So I'm going somewhere, I promise. But you know, I love a mezcal Negroni, but I use a mezcal, I use Punta Mes, and then I'm using, you know, maybe it's Campari or some of the kind of bitter, whatever. But I mean, these are two really good substitutions for the base spirit in a Negroni. I mean, one, you've got duality that's going to give you kind of that, you don't go like super smoky with a mezcal or a scotch. It's kind of I guess it would be more of a smoky Boulevardier. And then if you go the Watershed, I mean, again, I'm getting kind of that nut, and I'm trying to think of, I don't know if you mentioned the name of the liqueur, but there's a liqueur that's a really nutty, and I can't think of it's almost, I'll tell you. So I would go with the Watershed. I would go Watershed, Cynar, and a bitter. And I think that would make a hell of a play. I don't know what we would call that. I guess we'd call it the nutty Negroni. I don't know, but or the watered down Negroni. But I think that would be a really nice play with that kind of artichoke and that tartness in the Cynar. I think that would really polish off a good play on a Negroni there.
Oh, for sure. You're giving me all kinds of ideas, and now I'm like, oh, I got to go home and make these cocktails.
You'll get the bill later. Don't worry.
Thank you for the suggestions. Here's your invoice.
Oh boy.
No, I mean, I think that is we'll always have our purists who think, a barrel or whiskey should never be finished in another barrel, and you shouldn't add ice, and you shouldn't make cocktails, and you probably shouldn't have fun or go to the movies too. But that's not quite what this is all about. Like I think of these things as ingredients at times, but I think they also shine on their own. So find out where you like it, and that's a lot of times a great introduction for people who are just getting into it. It's like, hey, I don't know what I'd like. It's like, well, okay, well, what do you typically drink? And if somebody is just getting into bourbon, I'm not going to hand them, or if that's what they love, I'm not going to hand them like, okay, here's 130 proof 10-year-old bourbon. Like, that just doesn't make sense. So it's like, okay, let's prime a cocktail for you, get you into it that way, and then you start pulling back a little bit. And I think everybody takes for granted that we all started at some point in this, and I had a bottle of Maker's Mark in my freezer that I thought that was what made you a cool bourbon drinker at some
Give me the biggest, cheapest bottle you got that I can get with a fake ID.
Exactly. It's like, okay, that was what I thought was making me really fancy was, I went to a steakhouse and ordered a Crown on the Rocks fresh out of college, and I'm like,
let me get the bullet with a big rock. Let me get a bullet bourbon with a big rock, and like I'm winning. And it's like, but I really don't like bourbon that much. And it's like, right, and I'm not dogging out Bullet. I'm not dogging out.
Cal, I think you're picking on me again.
But I kind of enjoy it at this point a little bit, but I love bourbon and Coke. I can't stop myself.
I do too.
It's just good. Like, give me a bourbon and Coke on a fall day, preferably at a Florida tailgate. And it is just, one of the, I'm not going to call it a cocktail. It's a mixed drink, but it is one of the perfect mixed drinks you can have. And so I'll throw it up on Bourbonr, and just without fail, everyone.
Oh no, you get dogged out for
sure.
Never
mix, okay, guys, I get it. It's Eagle Rare.
What's interesting? Blake, earlier on, you said you like to drink, I think, wine with steaks, right? You don't like to drink bourbon with steaks. And that was interesting you said that, because Cal and I have talked about this before as well, but I was either reading one of his books or I heard him on an interview or whatnot. But Adam Perry Lang, who's like kind of like a master of meat or whatnot, said he loves to drink bourbon or like a whiskey with steaks because it kind of cleans the palate. Maybe pair that with a wine and maybe a bourbon. But I think the point he was making was that in terms of the bourbon, like it was kind of like a cleanser, if you will.
Yeah. I could see that. Cause when you got the heavy, fatty steak and you're eating it, and I think I'm like putting the Holy Grail meat company's kids through college at this point. Where like, a little bit of bourbon. I think it's more of a temperature thing for me at times. Like, I would maybe actually throw a rock in there or something if I'm eating it with or if I'm drinking bourbon with food. I'm probably telling on myself a little bit, but yeah, I mean, Adam probably knows better than me, so I'm going to go with his advice. I'll give it a shot. Hey, I'm never afraid to try it out.
Yeah. But here's the thing. So let's say, you bought the whiskey, and it's your whiskey or bourbon, and I think you should damn well drink it however you want to. And who's to say that I'm drinking it incorrectly? And, the folks that are saying, don't mix your, I don't know, what would I mix if I were mixing? Oh, you know what I mix all the time? I mix Old Granddad 114 and Mellow Corn. That's my house blend. Mm-hmm. And I call it Mellow Granddad, right? And if I'm having and I do it regularly, and I do drink Coke Zero. I'm trying to keep this this older figure into some kind of positive. So Coke Zero, but I love a good Coke Zero and a Mellow Granddad. extra heavy on the Mellow Granddad, easy on the Coke. But there's nothing on football Saturday and SEC showdown.
Preferably in a red Solo cup, and
yeah, I got a collection of these Masters cups that I tend to use. Real fancy. I think I dug this one out. I picked this one up out of the trash can actually, and I'm like, dude, you just threw away like. The beer was like
that with me. Yeah,
the beer was $2.50. The cup's worth like $7.50 on eBay. So I'm like, I'll take that. Let me get into. Let me ask a question. You maybe trade secrets, and you may not answer. So in getting SEELBACH set up, and what do you say? You're 2 years in, give or take 2 year anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in our 3rd year now. Mm-hmm. And you set the company up in DC. Was there a lot of red tape to go through, and was it a huge burden? And Tim, so we spoke with Tim with Chattanooga Whiskey a few weeks ago, and he was very forthcoming. So and I'm not.
Hold on.
But I mean, if you don't know that people are trying to imitate or do what you're doing. Oh, sorry. Did I cancel?
Let's keep on going. Yep.
Am I here?
Yeah, I think I got it.
Yeah. So we spoke with Tim with Chattanooga Whiskey, and he was very forthcoming with what they did in Tennessee to be able to do what they're doing. And, and I'm sure you had to go through some of the same hurdles or, more or less, whatever. But if you give the listeners kind of a synopsis, and hey, if you think competitors aren't coming, you're wrong. That's the reason we're doing things like this to promote SEELBACH.com. And hey, if you want to order liquor online and you're one of the states you can get it, that's where you should go. Yeah. But what did that look like, if you can kind of par that down into a cocktail format?
Yeah. So, I mean, we didn't go through because I didn't have to change any laws like the Chattanooga guys did. So I was very fortunate there. Everything was in place. It's just a long process, and it's one thing after another. I mean, it's, it's, hey, your fingerprints didn't come back, or you got them done in Florida, and we need it. It's like, okay, there's just so much red tape in the alcohol industry. So I didn't have nearly that, but I mean, so we've been operating since July of 2018. Yeah, that'd be right. July of 2018. I actually got the license basically January 1st or maybe late December so it's been call it January 1st, 2018. So there's 7 months there of just getting set up. And I probably started talking with the previous owners about selling at least a year before that, actually a little over a year. So it was just so this has been almost 4 years that I've been mulling over the idea, trying to get everything set up. And it's just, in the alcohol industry, nothing's fast, nothing's easy. Everything is pulling teeth or cutting through red tape.
Have another sip.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I mean, there's always competition coming. I always look at it as, I know what I'm doing. We kind of have our plan in place. We're moving forward and we're growing. And really, competition it's good for everyone at some level. We have our niche. But the more people are moving online, that means the more options there are. And so then you have more customers getting more comfortable with buying, alcohol online. So I think that's fine. We've never tried to compete with the big guys like Caskers or Flaviar or any of those, because I think, they're bigger than us. They serve their customers and their crowd. And, we kind of do our own thing as well. And, if nothing else, I don't think anybody's taking on the Nocino finished bourbons and all that. And that's what I've always said. I don't want SEELBACH to be the place where you find every possible craft spirit. I think it is, or I want it to be the place where you find the best vetted craft spirit. So, I don't really want 12, butterscotch rum, pineapple rum, and there's nothing wrong with flavoring as long as it's done naturally, it's transparent, and it's a little bit different and unique. But so we're not looking for 15 kinds of rums and 13 different flavors of vodka. We're looking for a little more in depth. We've got one coming in this week that I'm really excited about. I've been working on for a while. It's Frey Ranch.
You want to share that with us?
Yeah, so it's Frey Ranch. I don't know if y'all seen them, but they're out of Nevada, and so they grow all their own grain. They process the grain. They distill, they barrel, they bottle everything on their own ranch, and it's just an incredible product. I always say typically you have like one or two of three things. It's either a good product, a good story, or a good design / marketing. And very rarely do you hit all three of those in a product, and they've just kind of knocked it out of the park on all three. So they're one I'm excited about. And that's, I think there's always a market. I think there's going to constantly be more customers coming in who are tired of the bourbon limited release rat race, but they still want something cool when their friends come over. And so that's kind of the market we're looking to serve.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'd say, I wouldn't say you're looking to do it. I'd say it's done.
Yeah,
Exactly.
hopefully.
Exactly.
We can always take more.
No, well, I didn't mean it that it's mature yet, but I'm saying you've accomplished the goal for sure. Yeah.
Blake,
I've got kids that got to go to college, so we got a lot of work to do.
Perfect. So Blake, one thing I was thinking about when I was thinking about you is you have been in this for quite a while. Since 2013, you started your blog, and you're looking at, and you talked about this early on the pod in terms of you're looking at the bourbon industry and saying there's a lot of micro bourbons or whatnot that are coming out, the craft bourbons or whatnot. And you see, Cal and I see it all the time. We talk about this quite a bit. You got these big guys that have got these bourbons that are just these trophies that are insane to get. You got to get intense and you got to go out there. And it reminds me a lot of the watch industry with regards to what's going on in the watch industry right now. So if you want to get the new Daytona, it's like, it's like a 5-year wait list or whatnot and whatnot. And you got people like Hodinkee are out there talking about, the different types of watches. And they're like, I'm so tired. Everybody's showing me their Pepsi GMT or whatnot. And you're doing the same thing where you're showing people there are different types of bourbons and whiskeys out there that are different and awesome. And these are the ones that are like, they're available, and try these because they're different from those, but you're gonna have a great time with these types of bourbons and whiskeys out there.
Yeah. And that's where I think we kind of take it for granted in the bourbon world as well. We think we're the only niche that has this crazy collector side. And so I've been working on a post. I need to finish it at some point for Bourbonr, where I interview people from other like collectors communities. So like I have a buddy of mine, he's Putter Ho on Instagram, where he collects putters, and he talks about all these, and he'll have like, I'm going to mess it up, but there's like Scotty Cameron putters that are some one-off release of this person's and it's like a $5,000 putter. And what makes it a $5,000 putter? I don't know, but we all kind of have.
Did you just say you're buddies with Putter Ho?
Yeah, he's Jacksonville as well.
Can you get this connection made?
Absolutely, he'd love to come on. He's a big bourbon drinker, and he lives in Jacksonville, and I need to tell
him we're abrasive, we're rude, and we have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah, no, he'd be a great one to come on. He's a great guy, and he's finally off of like his injured reserve, which he's been on for I don't know how many months, and then he went on lockdown for COVID. So I need to get him back out on the golf course. But no, really great guy, and that's kind of the fun thing is like you meet people that they're in the bourbon community, but then they're also in these other communities as well, and just really good people, but have
Birdies and Bourbon.
Crazy. Exactly. You bring them both together perfectly, but that's the stuff I like, and so it's I think you could still do both. We can collect the crazy stuff, but you still have to hit a 6-foot putt with some pressure on the line or some money on the line when you need to as well.
Well, or Dan could miss the 2-footer that should have been a gimme, but I'm like, I ain't giving him shit because he wants a stroke on every hole, including the par threes.
You got to put that out. You got to put that.
I don't want the part threes.
All right. So Blake, let me ask you, we're wrapping up on our hour here. We've kept you, hey, no shit, man. We really appreciate you spending all your time with us, or all this time with us. I mean, it's, I've definitely got a good, kind of good buzz going on. These are great bourbons. And, as I'm tasting those, and I tasted this with the rare breed, I mean, that duality still has like a punch, man. I mean, that is like a
fan. Poured a little more of it because it kind of has me like itching to go back a little bit.
I mean, and I like the Watershed also. It's the Watershed. Is it fair? Can I compare I'm not going to compare the two, but can I talk about the two?
Yeah. You can do whatever you want. It's your show.
No, absolutely not. This is an avenue to have guests like yourself on, and there's nothing negative. So for those of you that are just listening, I'm going to pour a little bit more Watershed in here. It's, the only, if there's I shouldn't say a dislike, but if I'm going to, what do we call it on like social media, like a star rating. It's not even a star rating. It's just the Watershed for me is I like the nose. I like the palate. It's just a little thin for me on the finish. I don't get a lot of finish on it, but it's still really good. And again, like that's why I'm thinking that thing goes really good with a Campari. That's going to kind of thicken it up a little bit and kind of beef it up. But you get that, what'd you call it again? The Nocino?
Nocino, yeah.
Nocino, yeah. You get that Nocino. I get anise like immediately, right? That kind of right in the face, which is good.
Yeah, and that's where I think it's all coming from the spices they add. The green walnuts add a different level of bitterness that I think comes out, and that's where some of the kind of more herbally notes are coming from, is that green walnut. But yeah, just really good stuff. And
it's awesome. That's, again, like you said, I mean, that's one you keep on the shelf. Dessert. You mentioned you love pecans earlier. Like if you like pecans, that is, if you're having pecan pie and vanilla ice cream, I mean, this is something you just pour you a glass and hammer down, man. I mean, that is excellent. Yeah. You don't need any toppings. Just do the pecan pie.
Just that.
Actually, I made a pecan pie the other night, and I forget which liquor I used with it. I think I may use larceny, which now that I'm tasting this, I discredited that this may go in my next pecan pie recipe.
Ooh, hey, I would say just, you got to find cool uses for it. And I think it highlights it. It accentuates certain things. So yeah, throw it in a pecan pie. I bet that'll be good.
Yeah, a little bourbon pecan pie. Let's see. So I was heading somewhere down the road with this larceny. I mean, excuse me, with this ASW duality. I don't remember where it was, but
we got to hit up. And this is going to be fun this week because I spent a ton of time in Jacksonville, and Cal used to live there. But we need Blake's Diamond in the Rough. So Blake, Diamond in the Rough, off the beaten path, restaurant, golf course, dive bar, whatever. So where are you going that we need to go next time that we probably haven't been to? That's like,
Murphy's for $1 beer night, $1 Guinness night. Murphy's $1 beer Guinness night doesn't count.
Pete's Bar in Atlantic Beach or Neptune Beach is not going to be, no. Oh man. So Diamond in the Rough. That's tough. One, call me. We'll play golf somewhere. I think we'll either play at my home course or somewhere else. Cool. But golf, I'm pretty boring at this point with golfing because the course I play at a lot is 5 minutes from my house. So it's an easy trip up there and back. And a lot of the courses around here have just been getting redone. I think 3 like this month, like San Jose, Pablo, and Ponte Vedra are all opening up this month after a redo. So those would all be good. Mojo's number 4 is still my favorite bourbon bar to go to. It's in the Avondale area. Really good barbecue. They were the first ones to ever do this bourbon scene in Jacksonville. They still have some really good pours at decent prices, and that's become the hard thing. Is we've gotten a lot more. There's one in Ponte Vedra called Julep. There's Valley Smoke. Both are really good, but the pours are you're going to pay for what you get in general. So Mojo's is definitely good. Blind Rabbit out at the beach, they still have a really good selection. And then so Valley Smoke, they have a really good bourbon selection and good barbecue. But Palm Valley Fish Camp is probably still one of my favorite restaurants to go to, and it's out in Ponte Vedra.
So are you on the west side?
Yeah, so I'm on the west side. So I'm like
Orange Park?
No, not that far. So we're like just west of downtown a little bit. We're
Gotcha.
called Ortega. Yeah.
Yeah, Ortega. Yeah. And what's the little town? So if you go 95 and you take 295 and go west, what's the
Fleming
little
Island?
like little 5 points or so, like 5 points or something?
Oh yeah,
like
so
that?
there's 5 Points, there's Avondale, and actually 5 Points is picking up. They for bars and that kind of stuff as well. There's 5 Points, there's Avondale, then across the river there's San Marco, Grape and Grain, great bar for bourbon. They also have a package license, which they've really picked up their selection recently, and they do occasionally have some good prices on stuff because they'll price it to sell, and that's always good to see. So I mean, be honest, I don't get out a ton that much with young kids. The nights out with the wife are few and far between at this point. For some reason, it's hard to get babysitters to take 4 kids 7 and under. I don't know why. That seems surprising to me.
Sir, that's your fault. That is your
exactly.
fault. And if it's not your fault, you need to ask for some assistance.
I've got more questions to ask then, but no, there's a lot of good stuff in Jacksonville now.
Very cool.
Even downtown Calford Chop House is really good. So yeah,
cool. Great answer, buddy. Great answer.
Yeah. Hey, so Dan's got to drop. Dan's got another date tonight with a golf course he's got to go to. So. But Blake, if you don't mind, if you'll stick around for just a second, we want to record. I want to chat with you for a minute or two and have another drink if you're okay with that.
Yeah. I've got a couple minutes. I will have to leave.
Oh yeah, cool.
Somewhat soon, but I did get the text of like, hey, how long until you're home? But no, we're good. Dan, great talking with you. So take care.
Cheers, bud.
Till next time.
Yeah.
Cheers.